It's the Auburn Observer Podcast, Tuesday morning edition. Justin Ferguson here, joined by my co-pilot, as usual, Dan Peck. Hello, Dan.
Ahoy, Justin. Good to see you. Great to be back in the friendly confines of the Wings 94.3 studio. Big shout out to our friends at Wings 94.3 for letting us use the setup. Your home for Auburn University athletics, including baseball, which just pulled off the big series win in Tennessee this weekend. Also, classic hits all day long. Stevie Ray Vaughan. Occasionally you get a Blues Brothers song in there, and Def Leppard as well. So classic hits, and we appreciate Wings 94.3 letting us use the studio.
Absolutely. We have a basketball episode for you guys today. Appreciate everybody who gave us some feedback on our last episode, our Observer subscribers only episode with our buddy Alex Kirshner. If you haven't listened to that yet, it's a really good time talking a lot about revenue sharing, SEC football. Had a lot of fun with Alex. You can check that out if you haven't yet. This podcast, we are going to do a basketball episode.
The Pirates talk didn't really make it into the podcast with Alex.
There was a lot of it.
He might need to do a Pirates only like PPE appearance in the future or something. Filing him away as a future guest, because no, that'd be if you did not hear the Alex Kirshner episode, he was fantastic as always.
As always. All right, Dan, we're going to talk some Auburn hoops, and kind of a wide-ranging one here. Got some NBA draft, some current Auburn basketball that we want to discuss. I guess we should start with the stuff that's probably more newsy, more pressing right now, and then we'll move on to other topics we want to talk. Tahaad Pettiford, Johni Broome, Dylan Cardwell and Miles Kelly both getting invited to the G League camp. I want to talk Jabari Smith and just talk a lot of hoops here on this episode here to kick off the month of May. The newsiest stuff, though, Auburn's still on the hunt for one more impact player, as Bruce Pearl said, in the transfer portal. The top candidate right now, fresh off of his visit, is James Scott. James Scott, Louisville's top center. He followed Pat Kelsey from the College of Charleston to Louisville, where he was a pretty big name pickup for them. He wasn't a guy that had a lot of stats at the College of Charleston. He was a guy who started a few games, came off the bench. He was an all-freshman pick. But this past season at Louisville, he started 31 of their 35 games, led the ACC in two-point field goal percentage, a whole lot of dunks. Saw that Montrezl Harrell is the only player in Louisville history who's had more dunks in a season than what James Scott just pulled off. Averaged 7 and 6 last season for a Louisville team that, we saw them in Lexington at the NCAA tournament, the revival as they called it. Like, Pat Kelsey did a great job turning that program around really quickly. Dan, I don't want to say super late in the game, because there's still guys who are, as we'll talk about, that are like filling out the NBA draft process, could go into the portal, might already still be in the portal. There's still good basketball players out there to get, but to be towards the end of the portal life cycle, and there's a starting center from an NCAA tournament team at a power conference level, high major level out there, and that Auburn has a real shot at, I think that speaks a lot to the destination Auburn has become for big men, and also just I think the general knowledge is that patience pays off sometimes in the portal.
And for Auburn to be in the hunt for a player like James Scott, I think it's important for a couple of reasons. One, Louisville didn't want to lose this guy, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is a guy who factored into the 25-26 plans for a Louisville team that a lot of people have in preseason top 10s and as one of the top teams in the ACC going into next season. So I think to poach James Scott from Louisville is going to be a huge coup for whoever ends up landing him. And for Auburn, if it's Auburn, the fact that you already went and got a pair of real front court players already in the Keyshawn's, in Murphy and Hall, to have James Scott join that room. I mean, it was going to be, and again, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. James Scott is not committed to Auburn yet or anything like that. But should you add James Scott, the fact that you were able to replace three front court players like, and I mean, and not to mention Turtle and JYD, but to replace the production of Johni, Dillon, and Cheney with three guys as accomplished as Hall, Murphy, and Scott would be. I mean, that would be a tremendous job that Pearl and his coaches have done this offseason of addressing what was a huge hole in the front court after the departure of the best players from last year's team.
Yeah, 100%. I think James Scott checks a lot of boxes for Auburn in their hunt. You know, we've heard Bruce Pearl say recently, you know, we were thinking, okay, if they go get more, do they want to get more firepower in the backcourt? Maybe what happens with your point guard situation. We'll talk to Tahaad and that news, or I guess not really news, just the analysis of what's going on right now with him. But instead, Bruce Pearl says, that, hey, we need to get another big man. And it made sense, right? Especially if you think that Keyshawn Hall is maybe more of a 3, or maybe a guy you want to play at the 3 as much as you play him at the 4. You do bring in Keyshawn Murphy, who can play that 4 or the 5 and play it pretty well. You have Emeka Okporo. You have, you know, Sebastian Williams-Adams coming in that you could play there. And so you have a lot of flexibility, but getting another big man, getting another center could, you know, create a lane for you to play Murphy at different positions, Hall at different positions, Elijah Freeman at different positions. It makes it a lot easier that way.
Hall and Freeman both being physically capable of switching from the swingman role to the post role, potentially, you know, playing the 4 as well as the 3, which, like we've said,
they might be their best at the 3, but they can play the 4.
And you haven't seen a ton of, I mean, JYD is probably and Isaac in his lone season, but you haven't seen, like you said, you haven't seen a ton of, like, usually you are either a post or
you're a 3 or a 4.
Yeah, you're one or the other. Hall and Freeman are unique in that they've got skill sets that would leave it, and, you know, it's a question as to where they should play.
Freeman a little lighter than Hall, and obviously coming from the D2 level instead of the Big 12, you wonder. Both of them are really, really good rebounders. Keyshawn Murphy, really good rebounder, and that's the thing with Murphy too, is that Murphy makes a ton of sense as a 5 for Auburn, but is athletic enough to play the 4 and play it really well. James Scott
Murphy makes sense as a 5 next to Hall, and makes sense as a 4 next to Scott.
Yes.
Like that's I think what's important to think about with Murphy.
Or any other center Auburn wants to get. But James Scott, 6'11", 210, you know, a really good dunker. We've talked about that. But last season...
Well, one more thing on that front, too, because we'd already said it seems like if you're trying to find trends as far as the guys Auburn has targeted this offseason, finishing at the rim was something that at times was not a strength of this Auburn team. For all the things last year's team, best team in program history, for all the things they did well, there were stretches where finishing at the rim and rebounding were both problems. And I feel like you look at some of the guys Bruce Pearl has targeted in the portal, and it's a
lot of inside scorers, a lot of slashers. I mean, Murphy was one of the best inside scorers in the SEC last season. It was automatic around the rim. Guys like Hall and Freeman were good at getting to the basket. I thought Overton had some of that in his game as well, bringing him in at the guard spot. Abdul Bashir as well. There's and obviously you know, and a guy like Emeka Okporo was a dude who lived as a lob threat and as a roll man. Scott does some of the same things. Last season, if you look at his numbers, top 20 in the ACC. All right, I'll just read it off in order. He was 19th in rebounds per game, 14th in offensive rebounds, 17th in blocks, led in 2-point field goal percentage, as we said, 20th in win shares, 20th in defensive win shares.
And it's important to remember, too, a lot of the guys who ranked ahead of James Scott in these categories are gone.
Yes.
Like, if he
came back to the ACC this year, he would be one of their best players.
Yeah, if you start crossing off the guys who rank ahead of him in these categories who aren't coming back to college basketball anymore, it's like he would have projected as, a top 3, top 5 inside player in the ACC if he decided to return to Louisville. And something else to keep in mind, because we've talked about this. You mentioned how it's you know, the way Pearl has turned Auburn into a destination for these kind of players. It probably speaks to where Auburn stands in the NIL universe.
Oh yeah,
with however much time left we have in this era of NIL, because you don't draw the interest of a player who had a home at Louisville and decided to go into the portal to test his market. Like you're not, if flies are coming out of your wallet, like Monopoly, like you're not in the market for the James Scotts of the world,
and you're not in the market to potentially bring Tahaad Pettiford back either. I think that's a big thing. Rounding out those stats, 10th in the ACC in win shares per 40 minutes. So, by minute, he was a top 10 player in terms of impacting the game. 9th in box plus minus, 5th in defensive box plus minus, and 7th in defensive rating. So what you're seeing is a top 20 rebounder, a high level inside scorer, and a top 10 defender in the ACC this past season. To be able to get that out of the portal would be very big for Auburn. Now, let's keep a couple of things in mind here. It's not a done deal, like you said, Dan. He visited Auburn this past weekend, and then went to Ole Miss for a visit as well. Ole Miss really needs a big man up front. So Auburn and Ole Miss. NC State has also been said to be in play there. So we'll see. But the fact that Auburn went out and got his first visit and made a pretty good impression on him could mean a lot in the long run. Another thing I wanted to point out, and from this, and friend of the program, Jason Caldwell at Auburn 247, getting the story there on his visit, reading it right now. One of the things that James Scott talked about after his visit was Auburn's ability to develop big men and run an offense with two big men. We had asked about, okay, where does Auburn go with their roster moving forward? Getting another big and potentially playing Murphy at the 4, or just being flexible there, moving those guys around. The double big lineup for Auburn, and don't want to take anything away from a guy like Chaney Johnson, who as a 4 could stretch the floor, but he was a really good inside scorer. They did a lot of two-man game, big, high-low, big men stuff there. This is a quote from Jason's story. I'll read here real quick, and definitely check out that whole story. He said, what stood out was the offense with the two bigs, Scott added. Just watching how they play and the two bigs play off of each other, watching the offensive scheme really stood out to me the most, and just the people around campus. It's a big deal because the proof is in the pudding. You can see it with your eyes. They're not just saying it. I can see it. It's factual. Dan, a few years ago, if you would have told Auburn fans, Auburn is going to become a destination where big men want to play because they know they can get to the next level through that, it would have sounded crazy, because Auburn was the guard place. The point guards, had some success with some wings like Isaac Okoro and Chuma Okeke. But we are now in a run right now, and you can throw Jabari Smith in there as well because he was a 4-man. But Walker Kessler, Johni Broome, you bring in a guy like Keyshawn Murphy and try to help him get to the next level. Could you bring in a guy like James Scott as well? Getting some of these 3-4 guys like Keyshawn Hall, Elijah Freeman that can have that ability to getting a guy like Chaney Johnson and taking him from a D2 player to one of the better front court players you've had at that 4 spot, and be a key player on a Final Four team and an SEC championship team. Auburn is becoming a destination, and we had said this heading into the portal, but it bears itself out here. It was a big deal with Murphy. It could be a big deal with Scott or anybody. If it's not Scott, another center. Like, who has a better pitch right now in the transfer portal with big men than Auburn? And in just a few short years, this is what Auburn's become. Look at what they did with Walker Kessler, and look what they did with Johni Broome. Why wouldn't any big man in the portal right now at least consider Auburn as a place that could help him get his game to the next level?
Well, and keep in mind that Austin and Chuma were both very big deals as recruits in their own right, and Chuma was a lottery pick at the forward position for Bruce after that Final Four team. But you're right; it does feel like, and you can probably point to the Jabari Smith, Walker Kessler, being able to pair those guys together, like that team. Was sort of where the shift started, and because the front court has been so important ever since, right? You had Johni
to the point where they're running a 4 and 5 out offense with two big men on the floor. Like, full credit, and we'll talk about him later. Dylan Cardwell, not a guy who was a expansive offensive talent in terms of his scoring and what he could do with it. It was a very limited scoring game. But that offense doesn't work when he's on the floor if he's not doing the distributing, the playmaking, the screens, the stuff that made that work. Like, credit needs to go to Dylan as well. Like, it might not be we're going to take you in the portal and make you an All-American, but it might be we can take you in the portal and make you a key player in the SEC on a contender, on a team that is capable of winning championships and going on Final Four runs.
And the product of winning. Because Bruce will tell you, like,
but winning with bigs.
But even before that, because if you think about like the Final Four team and the team after that, like being able to win at the conference championship level and being able to win NCAA tournament games, suddenly guys will answer the call who wouldn't have taken your call a couple of years earlier at the front court positions, and you're not having to find you're not having to compete at the bottom of the market. As a team in recruiting, you're not having to find gems out there as often. You're able to get in on consensus, McDonald's All-Americans or consensus, potential lottery picks, and that's a huge difference. That's a different place to be in as a college basketball coach or as a college basketball program, and that's where Bruce and Auburn, like they've elevated themselves into a place where now you're in the market for these kind of players. And I think that it's also important to remember, like, if you bring Tahaad back, like it's this team of potential finishers with paired with it's not just about the front court, right?
Yes.
You also have
that's a good point, because like we talk about this with football and like what Hugh Freeze and his staff are trying to do to make Auburn a destination for wide receivers and quarterbacks, because historically, that's not where Auburn has made their money developing players. It's different in basketball, obviously, because there's fewer positions, but Auburn is a place now where it's like anybody on the floor can see that they can get their game developed. Look at just this past season. Look at Johni Broome's trajectory at Auburn. Look at Chaney Johnson and Dylan Cardwell's in the front court. But also in the backcourt, look at what Tahaad's doing. Look at what Denver Jones became at Auburn. Look at what Chad Baker-Mazara turned himself into at Auburn. Miles Kelly. We'll talk about him later as well.
The names you're listing, like, to me, that's what's so interesting about the Overton acquisition is, like, that's a player that...
It's not a whole lot of fanfare, but I really like his game. I really like how he fits with this team.
Yeah, and I don't think you're getting on the floor at Texas Tech unless you're bought in on both ends. Yeah, I think he's like that. That to me is, and some of the guys you listed were probably higher promotions for Auburn. Whether it was Denver coming out of FIU with his reputation as a scorer.
That's an interesting thing. Yeah, Miles definitely. It's an interesting thing that it's like, playing the comparison game between role player on a Elite Eight team on a high major great program, or really big time stat producer at the mid-major or smaller level. And obviously Auburn's had success with both. That's why they could be in this position. So we'll keep an eye on James Scott. That could be something that could pop sometime this week. We're recording this on Monday morning, so to kind of give you a timestamp of what's going on there. Moving on from that, let's talk the NBA draft with Auburn. We are a week away from the NBA draft lottery. It is becoming lottery season. The NBA obviously on their biggest stage right now with the way the playoffs have gone. Some really great series.
And I made this point on the drive. We could talk about it maybe when we talk about like the modern NBA. But this is part of it. The lottery is certainly part of it, because like the conditions are there for this to be one of the crazier NBA off seasons. Ever, as far as the number of star players,
the fact that Giannis could be on the move,
including Giannis, like the fact that you've got star players like best player on a champion type of players who could be on the move, and there are several of them where it's like, do they make sense at their current destination? Do they make sense in their current location? Are they content? Do they? I mean, it's Giannis. I wonder about Jokic. I wonder about Durant, obviously, who, I think everybody assumes Kevin Durant gets traded somewhere this offseason. And then there's
also the factor of LeBron.
There's LeBron, yeah.
Trying to, he's timeless. He continues to produce at a really, really high level. But, like, there's also the question of how much longer does he have, in the sense of, like, how are the Lakers going to build around him for that? They obviously got Luka, but, like, what is the rest of that? Or what does he do to make sure that roster, what does that look like? So, yeah, there's so many different factors here.
And if you're the Lakers, aren't you sort of making decisions now with the Luka title window in mind?
Correct.
Like, you're not really like it was.
You want to maximize what you have left with LeBron, but you also know that, like, it could go on even further because also you're the Los Angeles Lakers. People are always going to want to play for you. But I wanted to talk about the NBA draft as it relates to Auburn. So the NBA Combine is coming up in a week, I believe a week or two. Both Johni Broome and Tahaad Pettiford got invited to the Combine as expected. Kind of interesting and kind of cool to see Auburn have multiple guys there. It's usually just kind of been, I guess, since the Walker-Jabari year, most years it's kind of been one guy who is prominently testing the waters. But the fact that Auburn could have two players drafted in this class, like people consider to be draftable pieces right now, says something. I mean, it makes sense for a team that went to the Final Four, but it also kind of shows the depth and the value of the development that Auburn's had. The timeline, it's going to take some weeks. Towards the end of the month of May is the deadline to pull back out. As we know, unlike some of these other guys who are in the draft process right now and also in the transfer portal, Tahaad Pettiford has said, and he's not in the portal, Tahaad Pettiford has said, if he is not playing in the NBA next season, if he's not playing professionally, he's coming back to Auburn. What does that mean for his stock? What does that stock look like? Because I think you could pull up a mock draft right now or a rankings thing that you see or a big board and say, hey, this is it. This guy says Tahaad is rated X in this class. That's what it is. There's a lot of people who are doing this. And I think a really good tool for that is a consensus big board. There's a big one of these every year in the NFL. This one is from rookiescale.com. I'm just going to read the description. The following big board represents the consensus outlook for the 2025 NBA draft to help provide a gauge as to how the market values the prospects that comprise this draft class. Input sources include ESPN, The Athletic, Bleacher Report, Sports Illustrated, Yahoo, The Ringer, Tankathon, For the Win, CBS, No Ceilings, NBA Big Board, Swish Theory, Babcock Hoops, SB Nation, and dozens of other boards and mocks from Draft Twitter and other scouting outlets. So this is not just one opinion, it's all the opinions weighed together.
Keep in mind, too, like as we just saw with the NFL draft, even consensus opinions can be wildly wrong about how these guys
and
are
they
doing.
Also have an algorithm that weighs, okay, how long have you been doing this, how detailed you are in your. This was updated over the weekend, so we're reading this on Monday. Right now, the consensus big board.
Who's the first pick?
You'll be surprised. Cooper Flagg.
Oh, okay. I've heard of him.
Also continues to be hilarious. Number 2 and number 3 are Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. Both played at Rutgers. Yep. Look at Rutgers' record this season. It's insane. Right now,
it was bad enough when Georgia had Ant, right? And it was like, you're terrible with the first pick.
The Ben Simmons, yeah. To have two top 3 picks.
It's like they were teammates.
Yeah.
And then you were still terrible.
Right now, the consensus big board has Johni Broome 32nd, so that's early second round, one of the first picks off the board in the second round. It has Tahaad Pettiford at 48, mid-second round pick. Now, some of you may be sitting here and saying, oh, I've seen draft people have Tahaad Pettiford as a late first-round pick. Absolutely correct. There are others who have him as a middle-of-the-road second-round pick, and that gets weighed together.
How about this?
I will say this. I have seen more second-round projections for Tahaad than I have first-round projections. It's good to see the consensus big board kind of backs that up.
Are there draft projection people that are considering that Tahaad may go back to college and just not putting him on their board at all? As like, are you supposed to be, if they're in the draft, you're supposed to have them on your on your board.
And then when they pull out, you take them off the board.
Yeah, because I would think there are guys who like they have they have their toe in college basketball still, right? Whether it's a Boogie Fland or an R.J. Lewis or a Tahaad Pettiford, and it's like
honestly, if you look at the big board right now, the only guy that looks like might still be hanging around in the first round is Yax.
Okay.
Like Boogie Fland, second round pick, Darian Williams from Texas Tech, who's in the portal and in the draft process.
Is Lewis in the draft on this? R.J. Lewis is he would be another.
He's
guy.
not on the board right now.
So that's these are players that people think could be like really, really high level college basketball players. If they come back.
These guys, and some guys can come back. They can get through the process and find out, okay, this isn't for me. But yeah, it's.
Would you be surprised if Tahaad was hearing that he was a mid-second round pick and he decided to stay in this year's NBA draft?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it is going to take back of the first round. I think it's going to take a first round grade. I think he's going to have to hear from teams that they want him as a first rounder. I think it's going to have to be the right teams in the right situation that are going to have a plan for him. Because that's the other thing, Dan, is like, if you're a guy like Tahaad Pettiford, you got to weigh out your options here. If you get drafted in the back of the first round, which he's not a lottery pick, but if you get drafted in the back of the first round, what are they going to do with you? You're not going to be the starting point guard on this NBA team. You might not even be the backup right now. It might be a situation where you're splitting time, at the end of the bench in the G League. Or is there a team that has a need or feels like they're going to have a need at backup point guard and sees a future that has rookie Tahaad Pettiford getting minutes in the NBA? If that's the case, that changes some things. If you're Tahaad Pettiford, do you sit back and be on the end of that bench and be that late first round pick and might not get a ton of playing time as a rookie? Is that more valuable to you than coming back to Auburn, being the guy on a team that has a real chance to once again contend in the SEC, make a deep tournament run again? Like, that's something you got to weigh, because I think financially, we talked about NIL earlier, I think Auburn can be very, very competitive up to a certain point in this draft. And with the way NIL is, I don't think the back of the first round is completely disqualifying Auburn off the table. Like, a lot of years it's been, Bruce Pearl said, if you get a first round grade, you should probably go. In this NIL age, and what Tahaad Pettiford could mean to a team as the only returning player, I think Auburn would be willing more to break the bank, splash the cash, whatever you want to call it, on a guy like Tahaad Pettiford, because this is a very unique time and place compared to, let's say, when Sharif Cooper was in the draft, or when Jared Harper, where it was like, this was as high as his stock was going to go, and he wasn't going to get paid, to come back. So go ahead and go. Like, this is a completely different. The economics have changed.
The financial prospects, are very, very different as far as what Jared or Sharif could make above board as college basketball players, and what Tahaad could be coming back to as a college basketball player. And that is that's got to be a huge factor. And you mentioned too, like the fact that Tahaad didn't really spend this year as the starting point guard and play 25, 30 minutes and I wonder what he could do to his NBA draft status, what he could do to his NBA draft stock with a season. It's not even another season, with a season as the number one point guard for a team where he plays the bulk of the minutes and as the guy, at the trigger. And what he could show NBA teams with a full season of doing that, because he doesn't have that right now. Like, no. he didn't do that. That wasn't his role.
If you're drafting Tahaad Pettiford, as good as he was this past season, there's a lot of potential and a lot of what if there with him if you draft him now. However, it's fair to say the NBA is all about what if and potential, especially with their first rounders. Yeah, the younger the better.
I was a little surprised to hear like that draft board had Johni ahead of Tahaad, because
and this is plugging in everybody. And that's just kind of the consensus grade of the board right now.
And it would make sense if you were just looking at like what they accomplished in their college basketball careers, but when you factor in that the NBA prioritizes youth and potential, I could see why Tahaad would be a would be a really tempting proposition for an NBA team. And you mentioned, as far as the money, like, I mean, again, these are all sort of rumored figures in the NIL space, but JT Toppin going back to Texas Tech, like the story was that he'd received a second half of the first round, last 10 picks of the first round type of grade from the NBA draft people, and Texas Tech made an offer that apparently beat that. Made an offer that was worth his while for him to come back and play another year of college basketball. So I mean, we're seeing it's not happening. It's not commonplace, but we are seeing players who have even first round potential in the NBA draft who are deciding to come back and play at least one more year of college basketball.
It depends on who you look at. NBADraft.net, which a lot of people like to point to, has Tahaad as a back of the first round pick.
You wonder if Flag could have just set a number.
Exactly.
Right?
Also, like, it was funny. There was a thread of those people who use Twitter like it's LinkedIn, and they come like, this is why, like, business mindset people. And it was like this 25 tweet thread the other day for some of these sports business dorks, and it was like,
all right, do you have to click show more?
Yeah,
I gotta read. Yeah,
and it was like, here's why Cooper Flag turned down a potentially like whatever offer from Duke, and it's like, yeah, dude, because when he's the first overall pick, he's going to be generationally wealthy for the rest of his life if he just stays healthy. But anyway,
where can I subscribe? Right?
Exactly. Sam Vecini, who I really like at The Athletic, has both Johni and Tahaad. I think he had them back-to-back early second-round picks for both of those guys. Jonathan Givney at ESPN also has Johni Broome at 38 and Tahaad Pettiford at 39. So it's like the bigger names are kind of saying, yeah, this is probably a second-round guy. There are people who are – there are certain draft analysts, draft bloggers, even guys who are a little bit more well known probably to the average fan who love Tahaad and love what he's got. The thing with Tahaad to me is it's going to be like the size is always going to be a knock against him. I think teams are going to want to see what he can do more as a defender. At the next level, another year could help him out there. And it's just, getting that feedback. The other thing to keep in mind here when it comes to Tahaad, and again, I think Tahaad Pettiford, if I had to make a projection right now, is that he's probably second round, very end of the first round pick at best, and I feel like Auburn could be in a position to bring him back if that's the feedback he gets. Now, if he goes to the combine and tears it up and gets different feedback, but that's kind of the situation right now. I would predict today that he's back. I would also, coloring that opinion for me is how Auburn has operated here this last month. They have not gone out and gotten another point guard or, really pushed hard for that because they're leaving the door open for him, and I think there's a reason why they're leaving the door open for him. If they thought he was as good as gone, I think Auburn would be operating differently in the portal right now.
I wonder if the Chad situation goes differently if Auburn thinks Tahaad Pettiford definitely isn't coming back, and suddenly like you're looking at potential contributors anywhere you're thinking
dollars and cents and what you could give.
Yeah, exactly. Like I wonder if that situation
and hear me say,
without any knowledge of like the internals there,
But my point was hear me say, if Tahaad Pettiford gets the right feedback and goes to the NBA, I think he's going to be a very good player, and I think he needs to make the best decision for himself. I think that decision right now looks to be trending towards coming back to Auburn and being the lead dog for another year, or being the lead dog for a year at least. At Auburn, because I think the size is going to be something that people are going to knock him for. Like, talent-wise, he's got it. I think he's behind some point guards in this draft and some other guards in this draft because of how tall he is. And he's always going to be that height. And in the NBA, they're going to want more size and more experience. So it could go either way, obviously, at this point. I do think it makes more sense for him to come back, but we'll see. Like I said, if he goes to the combine and goes nuts, we may be talking about something different.
And you're right. The size probably,
the size is going to be the thing that I think stick. And look, he's not going to get magically bigger with another year at Auburn, but what he could do with another year at Auburn.
Go to Europe and come back with have the.
Well, and it's funny if you look at this consensus big board, the only guy in college in the lottery picks that it wasn't a freshman this past season is CMB from South Carolina. And like he obviously helped his stock out more. And so it's not a guarantee. This next NBA draft class has a ton. It's the AJ draft. Like it's going to be crazy. But yeah, if there's so much more potential for Tahaad Pettiford to improve his stock in the NBA for an NBA draft perspective with a season as the starting point guard at Auburn.
The fact that his role is different feels really important. Because
it would be different. Yeah, it would be different if they were bringing him back to do the exact same thing. We know that would not be the case next year.
And I think that was sort of like,
although he did end up playing a good chunk of minutes at point guard, I think he would get a lot more though.
But the like NIL wasn't a thing yet. But like Sharif Cooper. Right, like another season of college basketball.
It's the Sharif Cooper, Jalen Green, or whatever it was. Was it Jalen?
But another season of college basketball, right? Like with Sharif, like because he'd gotten to spend a year as the point guard, like he'd made it, and maybe he would have improved.
Tahaad only played 23 minutes a game last season for him. It was 6 on the team. I think that changes next season. I think he's up at 30. Or more.
And I think 30 minutes a game as the number one point guard and the guy in there at crunch time and the guy, like you said, if there's questions about his defense, he'll have more of an opportunity to show that in the upcoming season. Like I think there's...
And I thought he worked hard on the defensive end. It just, again, like if you're that size, NBA teams are going to want to see that if you can really, really hang as a defender.
It seems important that if he were to come back to Auburn and play another season... Like his role would be different enough that it's something else to show NBA folks in a way that
I think he could play his way into solid first round, potentially lottery pick territory if he came back to Auburn.
And that's the other thing is that like I mean and you wonder
and make himself a good bit of money in the meantime.
Yeah, you wonder how commonplace this view is if this is the consensus, but the idea that like with Tahaad like maybe right now you can get a lottery pick talent at second round prices. Like maybe there's a team or two thinking that. But if he were to come back next year, maybe he could show that
the contracts completely change.
Yeah, and he could be
the higher up you get picked, that first contract looks a whole lot different. Front of the first round, back of the first round, definitely in the second round. And
then you're talking about lottery pick talent at lottery pick prices.
Right. And this should also come with the disclaimer that as he goes through this process and gets feedback, if he hears the right words from the right teams, that might be enough. Okay? He's got to make the best decision for himself and what he values. And Tahaad is a guy that I talked about this with, in the mailbag at one point. Where I don't think Auburn's going to be caught off guard either way. That does not seem like the way Tahaad or Auburn is going to operate. Like, these are two sides that I think are operating in great faith with one another. Auburn would love to have Tahaad back, and they're going to try to do whatever they can to get Tahaad back. But I don't think it's going to be a situation where Auburn gets left out in the cold or Tahaad bolts and like there's no planning for that. Johni, by the way, I'm interested in Johni for this day because it's second round. It's a lot of second round projections for him, and that makes sense. But I wonder what team gives him a chance seeing what he did at Auburn. Because he's old. He's an old big man. And those, like, we've seen older big men in college basketball be National Player of the Year types and be second round picks, G League guys and all that. I wonder what Johni can do because like he's got a lot that you would like because he has modernized his game so much. Looking at a mock draft right here that has that 36-37 area, like, could he end up with the Pistons? Could he end up as a bench big, behind a Joel Embiid in Philly? Could he land in San Antonio on a team that's good that has a lot of talent?
And these teams could change so much between now and the start of the season too. Getting back to how active this offseason could be. They're like. And sort of like in broad strokes, right? Like what's the ideal landing spot for a Johni Broome? Is it somewhere that has?
I think it's somewhere that could use a bench big right now, and like
somewhere that has a superstar up front right now,
sure.
and maybe has some minutes to spend, other than that guy.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be in a spot where he's going to get a ton of playing time right away because he's most likely a second rounder. But second round guys, just a place that says we need a center, we need a power, might end up being a power forward in the league. Like, we need a few minutes from this kind of guy. He's got experience. It's like, it's not because of his age. It's not like you're taking a second round pick on a flyer of a kid that may have fallen out of the first round, and it's all upside and potential and what. And then you could play him a bunch in the G League and see see how he continues to develop. With Johni Broome, I say this with all due respect, he's close to a finished product at this point. It's a very good finished product, but what does that look like in the NBA? The other thing with Johni is just, and Bruce Pearl said this a lot during this past season when he won National Player of the Year. He says, it's like, he doesn't have elite athleticism, but he's just really good at playing basketball. And it's kind of like with the NFL and other sports. It's like you project a lot on athleticism because you're going to be playing elite athletes. You're going to be playing better athletes every night. But there's also some of it where it's just like, if you're that skilled, you can make it play. I think Jokic is the most extreme example of that, where no one looked at that dude and saw elite athleticism. They saw a lot of skill, and it turned out to be a lot more skill that could outweigh the fact that, as my brother eloquently puts every time he watches Nikola Jokic plays, it looks like he's playing basketball in flip-flops and jeans. And it's wonderful basketball when it works. And he's one of the best to ever do it in this generation. And
bigs can look. I mean, bigs can take all forms in this NBA too. Like, you can be a Julius Randle type, or you can be a huge point center. And as long as you can make your game adapt to the modern game, you can make it work. I sort of like the idea of Johni as superstar insurance. You know what I mean? Like, if you have a Giannis or a Wemby or a Zion Williamson, or somebody who Anthony Davis would be perfect. Like a guy who you know what you're getting out of him, but there's also the very real possibility that you could be without that player for a long period of time. Charles Barkley and the gang on inside the NBA. I don't know if they still do it, but they called Anthony Davis street clothes for a long stretch of time during his because of his injury history. Like I think a guy like Johni Broome, like, fitting in as and maybe evolving into more than that, because we've seen upperclassmen in the SEC show up in the NBA. Like, you think like Herb Jones, right, has turned into a guy that can give you like quality minutes in the NBA, and I don't know if that's what they thought they were getting when they brought him into New Orleans. And so I think Johni, like, maybe, I mean, and look, and maybe there's a bunch of minutes available on like a terrible team, right?
Yeah.
And Johni can play his way into a role there. But I could see him.
I'd like to see him land on a team that is winning right now and could use depth up front, and could and find a way to value that type of player. That's what I think would be a great spot for him. All right, we will. I want to talk Dylan Cardwell and Miles Kelly getting their combine invites, the G League Select, the camp invites as well. And I want to talk some Jabari Smith before we go on this basketball episode. Before we do that, real quick, just want everyone to know, if you like this show and you want more of it, you want to listen to our Alex Kirshner episode, you want to listen to twice as much of this podcast each week, and also get all of the newsletters sent straight to your email inbox as soon as they drop, go to auburnobserver.com and subscribe there. $6 a month or $60 a year gets you in. We appreciate everybody, continuing to read and listen during, not the newsiest time. It's kind of more of a downtime, which is good because, it gets pretty crazy from August to April around here each year. But wrote a big story on Monday about how Auburn football was picked to be a top turnaround contender by Bill Connolly from ESPN, and kind of diving into the numbers behind that. We've got some really fun mailbags. We're going to have some more basketball in the near future in the newsletter side as well. And we'll have all the podcasts where we get into a lot of fun, have some more interviews, to have some more guests here coming up in these next few weeks and months. So auburnobserver.com, subscribe there. It helps us out a ton. All right, Dan, let's talk Dylan Cardwell and Miles Kelly, both making both getting the invite to the G League. I want to get the name right. The G League Elite Camp. Now, this is something that we saw Johni Broome do a while back. Have a phenomenal time and really get a lot of that feedback that you were talking about the other day, Dan, when we were on the drive. Like, he comes back from that camp and he looks like a completely different dude with the way Auburn used him as a more modernized big in a new look offense.
Yeah, and Johni really, he opened a lot of eyes that summer and at that G League combine as far as a guy who could, who was going to continue to improve. Johni had already been a high level SEC big for Auburn in his first year, but he only got better in those next 2 years. So yeah, it's great for Miles and Dylan. I think with Miles, and I'm not great at projecting like who's going to stick in the NBA and who isn't, but with Miles, I still look and I think, if you've got a skill that's already at professional level or close to professional level, it could keep getting you opportunities. And I think with Miles, his shooting is something that's just
3-and-D, man.
Yeah, like I think with Miles, like he presents. He can do something that NBA teams always want, and so we'll see if it. Now I felt that way about Bryce too, right? And I know Bryce lacked prototypical size for the NBA, but I thought like maybe his 3-point shooting could get him an opportunity.
And he stayed in the G League for a minute.
And he stayed in the G League, and I believe is still playing professional basketball. But it's
all those guys are still playing professionally.
Yeah, so I mean, but I think
doing it well.
Maybe Miles gets an opportunity based largely on just that extraterrestrial shooting.
I think if he comes in to this camp and tears it up like he's capable of, showing that 3-and-D ability, I think his defense got a lot better at Auburn. He's a good rebounder. His 3-point shooting is elite when it gets going. I think he's got a shot to get on a team. Reading this kind of G League Elite, like this write-up here, mentioning that Jose Alvarado, Terrence Mann, and Jalen Martin are current NBA players who once played in the elite camp. This past season, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that were in this camp last year. They got 2-way deals. Even if it doesn't get him drafted, and but it may get him a spot on a summer league team, may get him a spot to stick on somebody's roster somewhere, get a 2-way, get a G League deal. I think that 3-and-D archetype with that size that he's got, like, there's always a need for that. There's always a need for that kind of player, and he's a good athlete on top of that as well.
Dylan's skill set is it's a little bit more of an acquired taste in the NBA, right? It's not necessarily what every team is.
I think his defense and his rebounding and his rim running can be valuable enough that somebody gives him a shot. I do think he's a G League caliber player. I do. I think the Dylan Cardwell we saw at the end of this past season, that NCAA tournament run, that guy can play here, and that guy can get on a squad and see where it goes. I think for him and Miles, it's just like play, and maybe you can play your way even higher, long term. But good for Dylan, man. I mean, that's a dude. Yep. That's a dude who stayed at Auburn for 5 years and could have played somewhere else. Could have gone somewhere where he would have been. I know he was a starter this past season, but been the guy up front. And he stayed loyal to Auburn. He stayed committed to Auburn. He wanted to be here. Made it work out. Won championships. Won more games than anybody else. Played more games than anybody else here. And it's not, okay, congrats, son. Enjoy the rest of your life. And I don't know how long Dylan Cardwell's NBA or basketball career is going to be. I do know what he showed this past season is going to give him opportunities to play for a lot longer. Because I think being that big and that athletic is gonna, like, there's only so many of those people on planet Earth who can do that.
And there's probably a job.
There's a lot of places to play basketball.
And there's a job for Auburn. There's a job for Dylan post basketball. As
sure, absolutely.
There's as the alternate mascot,
university president.
Yeah, there's something there for. And what I was saying about Miles, I mean, some of that applies to Dylan too, in that when you look at, like, when you look at things you can specialize in as a basketball player, like Dylan's rim protection, Dylan's rebounding, like there are some things where he can, like, maybe it gets him a shot.
Yeah.
I mean,
there are plenty of guys playing in the NBA and the G League who aren't like at center, who aren't scorers.
Yeah. I was going to say guys who do most of their scoring
dunking
at the rim. Yeah. That's I mean Tyson Chandler made a long career out of, like, I don't know how many.
Not the same type of player, but I always go back to the Clint Capella, where it was just it's athleticism and running the floor and catching that thing over the rim, and that's all you're going to get. But if you do the other stuff really, really well, that you can live with that, especially if you have guys around you that are spacers, great shooters, and all that. But yeah, good for those guys to get that invite. I thought, Bruce Pearl was adamant throughout the year that he felt like Miles Kelly had the game that could get him a shot in the NBA. I believe that as well, and I think Dylan Cardwell's worked himself into that spot. Even with, like you were saying, Dan, some of his limitations to his offensive game. And I think that just shows that, again, maybe people aren't looking at Auburn's, 4th, 5th, 6th options, whatever, as potential G League or NBA guys, like combine, camp invite guys, a few years ago. But with as much winning and as much developing as they're doing, why not? Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you, if you're an NBA team, you'd be like, I want to take a look at that guy. I want to take a look, because, I mean, you go through the elite camp invites. There are like some like big name guys on here that aren't necessary. There were great college basketball players that might not be great NBA prospects in terms of their athleticism, their age, whatever.
Which speaks to how tough it is, right? I mean, that's,
Caleb Love's on this list.
I mean, speaks
Ryan
to
Nembhard.
It speaks to, like, how difficult it is to get one of those spots on an NBA roster.
Yeah.
And even if you're on one of those rosters, like, how tough it is.
They're only drafting 60 guys.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot more than 60 guys that can play basketball at a high enough level that deserve being in that mix. So that's
and it's not just 60 college players.
No,
they're drafting 60 guys, and it's like that includes everyone around the world.
That includes guys that are international prospects, guys that have gone in different directions to get to the league that haven't been to college. It's a lot there. All right, rounding out this basketball episode, I wanted to talk, Dan, with the NBA playoffs underway. We're recording this on Monday. Sunday night, the Golden State Warriors won over the Houston Rockets in Game 7.
Cannot wait for Warriors-Wolves. That series is just gonna be awesome. Yeah.
And I'll be the first to admit. I mean, people may know I am a Warriors fan. It has been very casual. The further and further along, the deeper we get in my life, the less time I have to watch the NBA.
Do you suspect you're going to continue being a Warriors fan post Curry, or do you think it might have just been like?
I will always have a soft spot for that team, even when Curry's gone. And that will be my team I like in the NBA.
But it's like rooting for the Bulls after Jordan, right?
Right. I don't watch them as much as I used to. I used to get League Pass. Like, now, if I keep up with them, on on social media.
You don't watch basketball anymore.
No. But the other thing is like, it's part of the reason why I'm so into baseball, Dan, is like I've talked about this with people in the past, where it's like, I watch football and I watch basketball, and it can be professional. There's so much of it reminds me of work, and I get in kind of work mode, and I kind of break it down. And there's overlap, obviously. Baseball, I'm unplugged from it.
Yeah.
And full credit to Auburn baseball. We're going to try to have in the next few weeks, we're going to try to have our buddy Adam Cole on to talk Auburn baseball as well. I mentioned Jason earlier. Brian Matthews. A lot of people do a great job covering Auburn baseball on this beat. One of the things that draws me to the Braves is like, I don't cover baseball. I can just unplug and be a fan. However, my Warriors fandom is very casual compared to what it was like when I was in college. But I will say it was fun seeing them pull off a Game 7.
And you don't know.
It was crazy to see Buddy Hield go absolutely nuclear.
I mean, you don't know how many more times you're gonna get to see Steph.
Exactly.
In the postseason. I think we are at that point with some of the some of the more established.
Yeah. We keep thinking that about LeBron, and then it just.
But I think it's fair. I mean, fair to say
he comes out looking like Wolverine.
Those pre 2010 like superstars, like the guys that were in the NBA before, like LeBron and Durant and Steph. Like it's fair to wonder, when was Kawhi drafted? Probably in that ballpark too. Like fair to wonder like how many more times you're going to get to see those guys, at their peak. And so it's a lot of fun to get to see Steph still doing his thing.
I want to talk about Jabari Smith. I had a mailbag question last week about Jabari's NBA career and how this reader had expected more. And I think a lot of people have. The guy was the number 3 pick in the draft. I think there was I remember it's kind of funny, and even I believed it for a little bit, where it was like, there was some controversy where it was like, no, Jabari Smith looks like the best. And then they go Paolo Banchero and Chet Holmgren 1-2. That worked out, What flipped it for me, I've talked about it in the past, what flipped it for me was watching Paolo live in Greenville that year, where I was like, oh, this dude's a playmaker and he looks like he's made out of concrete. All right, that'll play anywhere. For Jabari, there was so much talk on social media, and I saw it with writers and blogs and stuff like that, about Jabari's role with the Rockets and how much longer this relationship's going to last, or what needs to change. Because they were pulling Jabari off the bench. He had some big shots in Game 7 to help keep the Rockets in it. Draymond Green, after the game, went out of his way to praise going up against Jabari Smith and saying he played like a vet in this series. He's not getting former top 3, top 5 pick playing time, but he's still around. Like, I'll also keep in mind, people are just like, oh, a bust or whatever. There's a lot of these dudes who wash out quicker. A lot of these dudes who wash out quicker earlier in their careers. With Jabari, I would like to see him be on the move this year, because I'd like to see him in a different situation to see if that can get him back to where people may have expected him. I think the other thing, too, is like for the Rockets, they were just so bad for so long and they got so much young capital. And like this was the year they kind of broke through. And Jabari had an injury. He had a hand injury this season that kept him out for like a month, like a little over a month. And Amen Thompson came in and took over. He's the guy that they've most recently acquired. I don't know. I really, a lot of Auburn fans I see on social media are hoping that Jabari can go somewhere else. I would like to see it for his future. The bust tag is not great, I'll say.
I think you're overreacting by calling him a bust. I think that it is fair to wonder, based on what you've seen from Jabari's NBA career thus far.
By the way, he hit those 2 big threes he hit those threes in the other game.
When you're taking where Jabari was taken in the draft, I think the expectation is that to live up to that, you need to be like an all-star or close to it.
And that's what they were expecting.
Yeah, and I don't know, like based on where he is right now, like I feel like it would represent a pretty significant jump for him to go from where he is now to all-star. Could he be a rotational piece on a good team? Yes.
I think he can be a starter.
Could he be a starter on a really good team?
I mean,
I would agree with that, and I think that
he averaged 12 and 7 this year.
Yeah, and I think and you got
35% from deep.
You got to remember too, like in these situations, you think about Orlando when they acquired Chumi. You think about Philadelphia during the process. Like when it's just about asset acquisition.
Yeah,
it can be tough for those players to develop on the floor when the roster doesn't really make sense because you're building for the future. And I think the future for Houston is this offseason. Like the future you've been building for is this offseason, where you can make a really interesting offer. I think Houston would have been able, if the general manager of the Mavericks had actually shopped Luka around, which you don't get the sense that that's what he did. You get the sense that he called the Lakers and pitched him an idea and they said yes. But like if he'd actually shopped if he'd shopped Luka around, like I think that Houston would have been able to make a really interesting offer to package some of their young pieces and some of their future for Luka. And I think they can make an offer like that for one of the superstars that we've discussed already on this show. Like would Houston want to go, like, does Kevin Durant help put Houston in a more serious position to win next year if they package some of their developing pieces for him. Giannis obviously would be a dream scenario, I think, for the Rockets based on what they've been building the last couple of years. And I think if the Rockets pursue something like that, Jabari would make sense as part of the as part of the package and maybe a centerpiece of the package to go get a superstar.
And my thing with Jabari is, like, this was his thing at Auburn, and it was coming out of, like, he's not a guy who creates his own shot super reliably. Like, he is a dude who plays off of that. He can space floor. He can do so much. And like you were saying, like, that can have value somewhere else. It may not be all-star, but, like, second team, figuring it out on a second team. There are so many stories like that in the NBA that I wonder if that's going to – now, they could keep him around. They could see him. When they got Jabari at third overall, I don't think people are saying this dude is going to be the takeover, can't miss. Like, they already had that guy. They already had Jalen Green. Like they already had the type of guy. So, like, it was putting those pieces around him. If those pieces now are in a different scheme and a different team, different situation, I know I just think a team that runs different stuff in the half court, I think, could be really good for a guy like Jabari Smith. Very curious to see where that ends up. He is being talked about. We're recording this on Monday. A lot of people are starting to mock him in certain spots. We're like, hey, this makes sense. This makes sense. I'll give you one that people pointed out today that sounds really interesting to me. The Detroit Pistons. And the Pistons, they've got Jaden Ivey, in the backcourt. You got Cade. Up front, Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart. They got All-Star Thompson as well. They've got a hole at power forward. And they've got, I mean, you plug a Jabari Smith into that Pistons team next season. He's not the lead dog. He might not be the top 2 or 3 lead dogs. But, man, how much value can you have playing off of those guys? It's been that catch and shoot game off of him, knowing he's a good rebounder, knowing he fights on defense.
I mean, the Pistons, I mean, it's been so long since they were on the radar as an NBA team. I mean, the first playoff win since like the Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton teams, right? Was the game they won this year. So I could see Detroit as a team trying to package, like it's about, like, how patient are you, right? I think that's one of the questions some of these teams are going to have to ask, because you can try to build gradually into something like, Oklahoma City is probably a good example of this too, where it's like these teams that are on the right track right now and could try to skip a couple of steps in the rebuild by making a trade, and packaging some of these assets for a superstar. It's like there are benefits and there are risks with this strategy. For Detroit, you could package a lot of what you just mentioned. Cade's not going anywhere, but you could package a lot of the other stuff and go try to get a superstar, an established superstar, and try to bring him in. If you don't want to do that, if you want to try to build around your young core and give it another year, a player like Jabari makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Like to go add him to, because it wouldn't cost what a Kevin Durant would cost, or what a
and if the Rockets
are
if the Rockets are going to try to consolidate and get that guy, say they go for a Giannis, say they go for a Kevin Durant, say they go for a Devin Booker.
What they get for Jabari could add to the kit potentially.
I'm just saying, like, Jabari could end up in a spot where somebody is making that. Like, say the Rockets go get a superstar, Jabari could be on the other side and be in a place where he may have a little bit more freedom and not have as much competition for that. Just because, like,
and that's my,
the Rockets just, again, they were so bad for so long that they just threw lottery pick after it, and it kind of ran into each other. And I think he's had some bad luck with some injuries as well that kind of slowed him down.
And without knowing what Detroit would give up in response, to get Jabari Smith, like, to me, that's where, like, I would guess that if Jabari's on the move, it's part of a package from Houston to go get a superstar, rather than just he's traded away himself to a different team. Although Houston could decide to pursue that, but my guess would be that Jabari is, one of
if
several.
the Rockets go try to make a superstar move, he would make sense.
He's part of the King's ransom.
I would love to see that Pistons move though.
Oh, for sure.
If the Pistons, and that would be the other set of teams that would look at Jabari, and it would be like they would look at Jabari and say, "Hey, we think he's not getting the role with the Rockets that he probably deserves to get. We could play him more. And you could go out and kind of pluck that piece. You see it all the time in other leagues, like young piece that is not necessarily a starter or a key player, a superstar talent for a team, but a team says, "Oh, that fits what we want right now."
I'll tell you the other thing to keep in mind with because so much of this is wrapped in the Giannis conversation is that the Bucks, they have to decide. It's probably not. We're going to trade Giannis and tank because they don't have their draft picks.
No,
for the next for the rest.
They're going to need value
for the rest of the decade. Yeah. And so if you're the Bucks, either you'd be tempted by an offer of
if the Rockets went after and you said, okay, yeah, you can get that. You've got a lot of young players that we feel like we could rebuild because that's the other thing about Jabari's 22.
Yeah, that's
the
crucial,
fact that
right?
people think he's a finished product already, or that he hadn't lived up to the hype. And again. The thing with Jabari is the Rockets did not draft him to be their lead dog. It was to be one of their secondary pieces off of that. Hadn't really maybe worked out to the level yet, but I'm telling you, man, that's my other thing is just even if he's never an all-star, I think he could have a very long NBA career doing what he just did this past season for the team. Being 13-7 and shooting really well from deep. I think he's still got room to grow as a defender.
If he was a finished product, and and he's not, but if he was, it's still a product that sells in the NBA. There are still teams that would.
By the way, Jabari's birthday is next week. He's 22 next week.
Yeah, and he turns 22.
Yeah,
next week, so he's not even 22 yet. No. So I mean, the thought if he was a finished product, would he have been a senior this year in college basketball or?
This he's younger than Johni.
Yeah, this would have been his senior year in college basketball.
He's younger than Johni.
So I mean, so
by almost a full year.
So I don't think he's a finished product. But even if he is, I think that's something that NBA teams
he just needs to find a spot that values him and maybe it's the Rockets. Maybe the Rockets move some pieces around on their roster and consolidate and say, okay, this is what we want. And this is where your role is because they can still extend him. He's a very that rookie extension. He's one of the more intriguing options out there right now. But it's like the Walker Kessler thing. Kessler found a place that really, really worked for him with the Jazz, and the Jazz were in a position where they feel like they need it. Now, are the Jazz still not very good? Yes, but what happens if the Utah Jazz win the lottery? And you start and you look up and you say, all right, your starting lineup is Walker Kessler and Cooper Flagg up front.
We were looking at the lottery before
yes.
the draft, and there are a couple of teams where it's oh boy, you suddenly put Cooper Flagg in San Antonio. You're right, and the possibility of having a Wemby, Fox, Cooper Flagg mix. Philadelphia, right? The thought of Cooper Flagg joining. Paul George is still under contract there too, isn't he? So it'd be Embiid and Maxey and Paul George and Cooper Flagg in Philly.
Did you know that Walker Kessler led the NBA in offensive rebounding this year?
Is that right?
Yeah.
I knew he was I knew he made a huge impact on the boards, but was he top something in blocks too?
Yes.
He was near the top.
And the Jazz just extended their coach for 6 years. They're just hey, we're all in, rebuild.
I saw that. I think this was a CBS article about the Giannis trade, where it was the Jazz are one of the teams. Brooklyn's in this category, maybe Houston as well, where it's the strategy to get Giannis might need to be you would have to put a huge trade package together for him, and then you'd have enough assets left over where you also put together a huge trade package for somebody else and pair him with Giannis, a little bit like the Clippers did with Kawhi and Paul George in the same offseason. I could see, and I guess that
I also wonder real quick on the Kessler thing. I also wonder if there's like a contender that's like, yeah, well, we want him to be our center. Like we're willing to. I mean, obviously the Lakers really wanted him at one point.
Although I wonder how long the Jazz view themselves as non-contenders, right? With the rebuild they're making right now, like I wonder if any of these guys are, because I think it's a little reminiscent of what OKC was doing as far as like how enthusiastic they tore down and the fact they've hit on a couple of the young guys already.
Oh, yeah.
Like I wonder if they're like I wonder if they want to sell that. I wonder if they want to sell that piece by piece or if they want to put together a really big package.
Man, if they could get Cooper, Flagg, or Ace Bailey.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess or Harper as well. Like either one. They got a top 3 pick. I think that's that could be a fun team down the road. All right. That was more NBA talk that we have ever had on this show.
Yeah. How about that, huh?
Which I enjoy.
Well, we got a couple guys who are like on the draft radar and a couple of guys in the league that are who's going to win it all?
It's hard for me to pick against the Thunder, man. And I know that's chalk, but
yeah, I mean it's
they were a machine this season.
It's hard for me to pick against Boston, right? Just because like the reigning champ.
We did just see the 1 seed in the East lose their first game at home.
I know. I think it would be.
I would love to see New York have a competitive season.
How about this? Boston. If it's not Boston OKC. The team that has disrupted things is who? If we're not getting Boston OKC in the finals, who has thrown a wrench into things? I have an answer.
Is it the Wolves?
I think it's the Timberwolves. I think Ant.
You think Ant goes nuclear?
I think Ant is here to break everything, and the thought that he's eliminated LeBron has a chance to eliminate Curry in this round, and. Yeah, it's just
that Oklahoma City.
I saw the tweet that SGA is the superstar David Stern always wanted, and Anthony Edwards is the superstar that he had nightmares about, and we could potentially get those two in the Western Conference Finals.
Absolutely, that would be a lot of fun. All right, we'll wrap it up here. We will be back later this week. Premium pod that'll come out on Friday morning. Send in your mailbag questions. Appreciate everybody with the feedback on the football story on Monday.
Justin, what a beautiful Righteous Gemstones finale.
Oh my goodness. I knew they were going to stick the landing because all 3 of the previous season finales were excellent. Like every single one of those were spot on. No spoilers. We're not going to spoil anything for you. This was a perfect ending to the show. Like they did the only thing, and I saw some people talk about this, and I agree with them. The only thing is I may have wanted a little more Baby Billy, maybe a little more resolution. That tie up kind of felt quick.
The two again, without getting into spoilers, see it, watch the entire series. It's fantastic. It's one of the best things HBO Max, whatever. It's one of the best things they've ever aired. I thought based on the way the show was building up, I thought that the stuff with Gideon, I thought was going to get more screen time. In this season, his journey, and I thought they did a good job
of tying it up.
They did a good job with it, but I thought his journey, to become. Maybe the centerpiece of the family as the new preacher. Like I thought that was that went a little off course in this season. And like you said, could have used a little bit more. That and honestly, as much as I love Baby Billy, the teen just thing felt very like as soon as he became the lead, everything about teen just felt very strange.
Well, that was the point,
right? But even but everybody's going along with it. It's like he's just gonna play the lead character now, like midway through production. But it was a, just a phenomenal episode last night, and a tremendous, maybe the best season they ever did, and it's right there. Like that's one of those shows where. And there aren't very many examples where I came away from every season thinking it might have been the best one. They ever did, and that's just what a run, and I think I
can't wait to see what that crew does.
Yeah,
next.
I think we're just on board with whatever. Like Danny McBride should get the old Clint Eastwood deal where they just give him money. And he's going to
surely he's getting the deal like Nathan Fielder's getting from HBO, right?
He's going to deliver you. He'll deliver you if he wants to do TV, if he wants to do movies, whatever. Just give him a budget and trust that he will give you something worth watching.
Comedic television.
Eastwood did that for 40 years.
Comedic television is his lane. I think he needs time, like the time of TV to like establish the characters and really like have them hit like they do.
This season was so this series, but especially this season was so cinematic though. Like the different stuff. I mean, he's showing you like he's got filmmaker chops.
Oh yes, he does.
And I know he's got credits on like he did the Halloweens. Yeah, he has a writing credit on the most recent on a couple of the most recent Halloween films.
Yeah, because the other guy who was the director with him
is it Gordon Green?
Yeah.
So I mean,
David Gordon Green.
And so it's I think I don't want to pigeonhole him into like I don't know if it's just TV comedy, like whatever he wants to do, like I'm on board, but it's can't wait to see what he does next.
Did you watch the thing recently? And if you haven't seen it, have you ever seen The Foot Fist Way?
Yes. Oh yes, I've seen The Foot Fist Way.
Did you see people brought it back up because of a podcast that he did with Conan recently where it's him on Conan in character.
Yes.
And like you can tell the crowd has no idea what's going on there.
And I can tell, as someone who watched it live, like nobody had seen The Foot Fist Way. Like nobody knew what was going on. And I think a lot of people thought that he was I remember this and thought that he was a real martial arts instructor and the real thing was going and the real thing was going wrong. No, the scene in The Foot Fist Way where he's hyping up the kid for the fight.
Such a good movie.
Where he's hyping up the kid for the fight, and then the kid gets mowed down and kicked in the ribs.
Also, yes, Foot Fist Way if you haven't seen it yet, and also because we're talking Danny McBride, the eternal recommendation of if you haven't seen it, watch Hot Rod.
Oh yeah.
If you have never seen Hot Rod, watch Hot Rod.
And you know, and I haven't seen Pineapple Express in a very long time. I remember seeing Pineapple Express and being like, that's one of those movies. I talked about Jack Black in High Fidelity. Like Danny McBride and Pineapple Express is one of those, and Seth Rogen in 40-Year-Old Virgin probably has some of this too, where it's like, if you didn't know who this guy was, when you saw the movie, and there's a very real chance that you were seeing him it was probably the biggest thing he'd ever done to that point.
Yeah.
And if you're seeing him for the first time, like I think Galifianakis in The Hangover probably has some of this too, where it's like people walk in to this comedy not knowing who this actor is, and you come away thinking like, oh, I just saw a guy become a movie star.
Yeah.
Like that's I think there's some of that with and McBride already had it. And you see it in glimpses in Hot Rod and Foot Fist Way, which I think both predate Pineapple Express. They're both right
so.
there. But it's like but in Pineapple, like that is another one of those like, oh yeah, you're seeing a guy like make his presence known as a huge comedic talent.
Check it. When we hit the floor, yeah, we turning hardcore. Gonna settle every score. Gonna win this holy war. To a groove that's so divine, turning water into wine. And when you lose your mind, we gon' turn the other cheek.